live. We have had a lot of different questions, so we thought we jump on here. We go ahead and do an Instagram live, answer some of the questions that we get throughout the week, and go from there. And if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments below. You can send us a text. You can DM us. But we had a few different questions this week that we wanted to share with everybody. Justin, you had one, a really interesting one. You want to start with that?
Yeah, I wouldn't, it's one that kind of comes up all the time, right? And it's around deposits. So, when people have to put a deposit, when people are out looking for houses rather, and you find the house that you like and you go ahead and submit an offer, there's a deposit that's required. So you're putting a deposit down with your offer. And there's a big misconception, and the question always comes up. It's always the same question. So it's something that we thought we'd bring to light on it is, what happens to that money, right? So if you have to give a 15, 20, $25,000 deposit, what happens with it? And the big misconception is that, do I have to come up with that over and above my down payment? So we just kind of wanted to set the record straight that those monies that are used for the deposit are part of your down payment. They are. That's not funds that are over and above. And where you see those funds is they're held in trust at a lawyer's office, or they're held in trust. And when you go to the lawyer's office, what happens is the lawyer kind of walks through all the numbers with you, tells you to bring in a certified check, which is always a weird number. You can never figure out why that number is what it is. And they go through a trust ledger, right? So the trust ledger kind of walks through dollar for dollar, and you'll see that deposit accounted for as part of your down payment. So we get asked this question, I would probably say, on 6 out of 10 mortgages. So it's an important kind of topic to kind of bring up and bust the myth on it, I guess, if you want to call it that, right? Where,
Yeah.
that deposit's part of your down payment.
Yeah, and we're seeing a little bit more too on the deposit. I don't know if you're seeing this, but we're seeing more. It used to be within 24 hours. Your deposit has to be submitted within 24 hours. And sometimes going to a bank and getting that money moved around that quick is a little bit of a challenge. We're seeing more within 48 hours, or as soon as it's available within the condition. If there's a condition of finance, having that deposit within there. The 24 hours seems to be less and less important. And maybe some of our realtors are seeing this too. But sometimes the banks, it's hard to get that much money moved out of a investment. When you find that house, maybe you're out shopping this weekend, you've been shopping for a while. You don't want to take money out of your investments early, stop losing the interest. So maybe something you talk to your realtor about is, can we make that a 36 hour, 24 hour, 48 hour, even longer condition for that deposit to have it, that it has to be into the seller's hands.
Yeah, I think it's understanding where the deposit's coming from, right? So, for example, if it's coming from, I'll call it a cloud bank, one of those banks with free fees and all that sort of stuff, not the bricks and mortar banks that we see out there. A lot of times you're calling into a call center, right? And they're not able to just kind of put that money somewhere. So they're mailing you a bank draft, right? So that in itself can take some time for those funds to get there and cause some added stress that may not be needed, right? So just really kind of have an understanding of kind of how it all works and have those conversations up front is always kind of the best way in understanding how it works. But again, those deposits that you're giving, nobody panic. You don't have to come up with additional funds over and above your down payment. It's part of your down payment. It gets accounted for in the down payment. So
Right. I want to have one too, like kind of on that deposit and that date, like the timing of it is one of the questions I kind of had, and we had a situation a little while ago of a Friday closing, right? We see these all the time. It's always great to close on a Friday, but there are things that can happen on Fridays that are completely out of your control. It's why we really would like to push back and get those Thursday closings. Everybody wants to close on a Friday because you're going to be in on Friday. You're going to start moving. You've got the weekend to move in. A lot of times you have movers lined up. If you've got good friends, you've got friends lined up that are going to be there to help you move over the weekend, maybe do some painting, help you get in there. And we're seeing more and more just little challenges that they're sometimes completely out of your control. I remember last year Rogers was down. Everybody will remember that Rogers completely crashed on a Friday. If your bank has Rogers services, there's no transfer, there's no way of getting that through. I remember a big bank, one of the banks completely shut down a couple years ago. I think it was a TD bank. TD couldn't handle any transactions on a Friday. It just completely shut down. And that happens. It's technology. There's a lot of these banks that are using really, really good technology. And sometimes it just doesn't go through. So when you have that Friday closing, if there is any delays, and again, this happens out of one out of every 500 files, it's very, very rare. But it's a lot easier when you're closing on the Thursday to have it a 1 day delay. It happens on the Friday. Okay, we're ready. We're ready to move in on the weekend, and that's a really key thing to have. So the Thursday closings are definitely a big one that we should see. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's something people don't realize, right? In the real estate world and you know how they have to register a mortgage and stuff that the lawyer needs to do. I mean, those offices close, you know, on Friday. So if there's things that aren't buttoned up, yeah, your house may not close and then you're waiting a few days until
yeah, that land registry office, it's going to close at 5 o'clock, and if there's no way around it, there's nothing like, out of the lawyer's hands, out of everybody's hands. If it's just the technology, we've seen it weather, right? We're heading into winter here. We've had ice storms on a Friday where all of a sudden power's out for the entire day. It can happen. The delays are moving. That's why that Thursday closing. If it's worst case scenario, you're not homeless for a weekend, right? Like there's no challenges. If it's one night, it's a lot easier to deal with than the entire weekend.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So Adam, I know you had some here, you know, some topics just kind of around down payment, you know, clients gifting a down payment, and just some kind of unique situations with parents, you know, wanting to be on title and then that sort of stuff. So do you want to kind of touch on that at all or?
Yeah, we had one that was talked about on one of our mastermind groups in within our brokerage a few weeks ago, in a scenario where parents had gifted the down payment to their kid. The kid went out and they bought the house. It was a significant down payment, $100,000 down payment. There was lots of equity in the house. It was just their child going to be living in the home at the time. Child fell in love. That new spouse, had some expensive spending habits. Went out and without the parents' knowledge, went out and they put a home equity line of credit on that house. They remortgaged the house, took as much equity out of the property as they could, and basically once that spending options were gone and the money was all gone, the new love of their life was gone as well, and left their child holding all of the money there, and there was nothing they could do. The parents didn't know, so sometimes it's worth it if you're doing that gift, to act as a co-signer as well. Take a small percentage of ownership, maybe even a 1 or 2% ownership of that property. That way, nothing can be done on that property without your knowledge. The last thing, people make mistakes, kids make mistakes, people get tricked into things. We see it all the time with a lot of different people, and it's nobody's fault. But just as a way to protect our family and to protect the equity in that house and that gift that you're giving as a down payment, might be worth exploring having an ownership share of that property as well, just to make sure that we're not losing that.
Yeah, yeah, we're seeing that a lot more, right? I mean, obviously now with house prices the way they are, it's no surprise that there's a lot of family that's kind of stepping up to help people. So it's just making sure that the money you're gifting to a loved one and everything, everybody's protected. So there's multiple different scenarios. Usually we have to involve a lawyer in those discussions. We're not here to provide any legal advice, obviously, but
Absolutely.
it's definitely things where we can get lawyers involved and you know all the facts, which is the key in everything here, right?
Absolutely.
Is knowing all the facts and you can make an educated decision of what's best for you and what's best for your loved ones and everybody involved for sure. So
Yeah, and sometimes I hear the pushback. Well, there might be tax implications, there might be land transfer fees, and sometimes a couple $1,000s in taxes or fees might be worth it. That's why, like I said, we've got great partners we work with our lawyers, our accountants, to help you out with those. Justin, you had another
love it.
question that came in this week. I liked. You want to share a little
Yeah,
bit of
so
that?
this comes up a lot, right? Is around appraisals. How do appraisals work? How do they come up with the value? One of the things that we often hear is, well, hey, that house down the street is listed for X.
X dollars.
Why
Yeah.
why did the appraisal come in? Why did the appraisal come in so light, right? Or not what we thought it was, or what the house is valued at down the street. And it's important to kind of understand how appraisers work. So appraisers are hired as a third party by the bank to confirm the value of the property, right? To know that the bank does have the value there, in a property in the property that they're going to loan the money to. So a lot of times you'll require an appraisal. It's very standard. All the banks do it. It's something that's there again to protect the bank and ultimately make sure that the house is worth what you think it is worth. So, how appraisals work is again, it's done through a third party appraiser. The appraiser goes out to the property, views the property. It's very quick, right? They're usually there 15, 20 minutes. They'll look at simple things. They'll ask you what updates you've done to the house. Take pictures, make, of the electrical panel, that sort of stuff, make sure the house is in kind of good working order and there's no red flags to it. Then they go back to their office and they kind of build their report from there, right? So one things that people need to understand is how an appraisal works is appraisers look at 90-day look back on houses that are sold. So not a house that is listed, because they say, well, how do we know that house is going to sell for that amount of money, right?
Right.
So it's sold and closed. So it's, what does that mean? That is when, how do I put it in
Well,
layman's
sold
terms?
and
Sold and
closed is a
closed means,
really key term there, right? Sold, just because there's a sold sticker on it doesn't matter. We're talking closed. The new
yeah,
family, the new owners have moved in, money's changed hands. That's when it's closed. Anything can happen between a sold day, the day that that sticker goes on, and the day that the people move into the house. We want to make sure that that value is actually there if we're using that as an appraisal dollar.
absolutely. And they'll look at things like, does that house down the street compared to yours, is it a single car garage versus double car garage? And again, it'll look at those sold and closed
Hmm.
to generate a value. And each of those things, a double car garage brings more value to the property, right? Square footage, finished basement, updated. Those types of things are things that they take into account to provide their value of what the house is actually worth, right? And that's the big misconception: is how does it work? It's sold and closed. It's not sold and pending, as we call it in our world, which
Hmm.
again is the house down the street that has a sold sign on the property, right, saying that it's sold.
Yeah.
It's, that was a good point. The best way to put it, Adam, is that, the new family, it's sold and closed. The new family has moved in, and that's considered a sold property and can be
Mhm.
used as a comparable at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, a very good point to have. And a lot of people, everybody loves their house, maybe a little bit more than the other one. Postal code, the location is obviously always going to be a big one that comes in there. For a lot of our clients, we're getting those home reports, right? So we send out a monthly home report for everybody that we've closed a home for. If you're also interested in getting those, drop a line to both of us. We're adding new clients that haven't closed a mortgage with us. You can get access to that housing report. And a lot of what that value is what's going on in your postal code, how's it being sold, and we've got some great realtor partners as well that help with those CMAs, and they can look at what those comparables are. They have access to a lot of that data as well. So yeah, appraisal is a
Yeah,
really good one, and a lot of
those reports are
misconceptions.
awesome. The clients that we have on those reports absolutely love them, right? I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but it kind of gives you an idea of how your house is performing in the current market. They love the savings component. It pulls data where interest rates are at in the market. So if there's potential savings with your mortgage, there's tons of value in there, right? And then obviously tells you, based on the more information you put into it, the more information it's going to give back to you, right? So it helps with a couple key points to kind of make sure that you know where you sit financially, how your house is performing in the market,
Mhm.
and obviously are you in the right mortgage today, and you have that peace of mind.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
those have been
Absolutely.
a massive hit for sure. So this is one, Adam, that is near and dear to my heart, and I love this conversation a lot. Is the a true pre-approval versus a non-pre or a not valid pre-approval.
Right.
You've had an interesting situation over the course of the last 2 weeks,
Hmm.
where client went into their bank pre-approved, started the process and things. So why don't you kind of highlight that and walk us through your scenario, and then the importance of understanding not all pre-approvals are created equal, I guess you could call it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, absolutely. So, a tough situation. We've got it closed. The families are moving into their new homes today, so we were able to find some solutions. But a lot of stress that was there that really didn't need to be, and that's in the pre-approval. So, what is for starters, what's a pre-approval? What is a ported mortgage? What are the differences between those things? things. Just because I qualify for a mortgage, my mortgage is already, $250,000, and I want to buy another house, and I want my mortgage to be $250,000. Doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to qualify for that mortgage as well. So it's not that simple. But doing a pre-approval where we're going to compare the property taxes, your new income, your new debts, everything that's on there is so important before you're going to list that house for sale, before you're going to buy that new house, and running a custom budget on every single property. We're doing some right now. Actually, I have somebody looking at a house. We ran 3 different budgets on 3 streets in the same area, and the property taxes went from $2,000 almost up to just under $6,000 for a similarly priced home. If that property tax is a lot different, that affects your monthly servicing ratios. That affects how much you can afford. So it's really important that you're running that custom pre-approval for every single property. We're actually looking at it because, where the bank might say, hey, yes, you're pre-approved, go buy at $400,000. Well, they're not factoring that home into it. They're not factoring a lot of different things that can come up. And it's really, really important that you know exactly what you're qualifying for. And it's not the bank's fault, right? There's a lot of these guys at the bank, and I have a friend of mine who says, don't blame the guy at the bank. They probably just started last week, right? Talk to an expert. Make sure you're properly pre-approved. We want to review your credit bureau. We want to review your income. We want to review that actual property that you're looking to put an offer in before you do it, so we can look at the property taxes. And don't worry about the credit bureau. Hey, that's the one we hear all the time too. Is I don't want to have my credit hit because what happens if. Right. Another scenario we had recently was, we got close to closing time. We had, somebody that had multiple visas on their account, and none of them were actually theirs. Right. There's a lot of mistakes on credit bureaus. Get those cleaned up. And if you're in, if we're getting close to closing time, and we want to make fix something with Equifax, good luck. Right there, Equifax is not moving really, really quick to fix your credit bureau, so it's really important. And your actual credit reviews make up such a small, insignificant portion of your credit. If you're good at, if you're going to be able to qualify for a mortgage, 1, 2, maybe even 3 credit hits, it's not going to affect you. It's not going to take you from being able to buy a house to not buying a house.
That's right. And I think it's a big misconception out there, right? Like, one of the benefits for us as mortgage brokers is, one credit check, we're able to use that credit check with multiple different lenders, right? When we're out trying to find you the best solution. So that's a big thing. And again, this is a topic I love. We both come from the bank, Adam, so we can speak to this a lot, right? When you go into the bank, I always joke. Everyone says they make $100,000 a year, right? Or whatever that number is, for lack of a better term. But a lot of people, there's a big misconception is how the lenders look at that income, right? What documents do you need to confirm that? So just because you're an hourly employee that works overtime and you made $89,000 last year, doesn't mean that they're able to use that full amount, right? So there's different lender requirements. Like, if your income fluctuates with overtime or bonuses, there needs to be a 2-year average. And unfortunately, it's really unfortunate. And I know you ran into this situation on your file over the last couple of weeks. They went into their bank, had the conversation. I want to get pre-approved for a mortgage, and unfortunately that person didn't ask the proper questions to understand how that income is derived. And put that person in a really tough, stressful situation. I know you were able to navigate it with getting co-signers and all that other stuff, but it just adds a lot of undue stress that if it was done properly at the start,
Absolutely.
working with the right people, it would have been a lot smoother of a process, right? So
Absolutely.
that's one thing I would say to everybody out there. Adam had kind of mentioned it. When you're getting a pre-approval, don't get so hung up on the number, because that number doesn't mean anything if you can't actually get approved with that lender. Anybody that's doing a pre-approval with you should be asking for, it's a pain in the butt. I'll be the first to say it, right? All of your income, the down payment, property taxes, really getting a full sense of your financial situation to make sure that pre-approval is solid, right? And yes, it's a lot of documentation, and it can be frustrating. It's like homework. Who loves homework? But spending that little bit of time up at the front to make sure and getting it and knowing that you're buying with confidence, as opposed to just walking in or filling out a 60-second pre-approval online. I'll say it. Those aren't worth the paper it's written on, right? We've said that before. We've
Absolutely.
had that conversation. So really make sure, the more questions that people are asking you, the more documentation you're providing, and or the broker or the lender's asking you for, the more
Mhm.
solid that pre-approval is, and it's going to allow you to buy with confidence.
Yeah, a little bit of time it takes up front is definitely worth the savings in the end of your time, your stress, everything that might go on. So, um, well, that's our Instagram live for number one. We've got no more questions. If you have questions, we're gonna try and do these. I'd love to say on a weekly basis, but on a regular basis throughout the winter here. And if you have questions, feel free to send it to us anytime. Drop on a DM. Go to Google, write them in on our Google pages. You can find me at Adam Walker Mortgages. You can find Justin at Justin Shows Abe Mortgages. Um, Look us up, drop the questions there. We love answering your questions. We'll answer them right away on our Google pages. We'll answer you right away. But if you've got the questions, so does somebody else. And we want to help as many people as we can. So thanks for jumping on, listening to us Yahoos here on here. And we hope to see you again next week. And we'll continue to grow these.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, Adam. What do you got plans for the weekend? Anything?
Nothing. We're not going to ball, so I don't know what to do. We did 26 weekends in a row, and now I don't know what to do this weekend. So probably a lot of yard work that didn't get done all year. Yeah,
Oh, there you
yeah,
go. Time
yeah,
for the Christmas lights, right? You're changing your Christmas lights this year too to
yeah,
stay up all year and
yeah,
doing all that. So that's
yeah,
good. So we'll be
yeah.
hanging out at the dance
Dance
studio.
studio all
That's
weekend for you. Yeah, yeah.
that's it. That's it. Anyways, have a good weekend, Adam. Have a good weekend, everybody, and please keep the questions coming. And we're happy